I'm Julie Bulitt. I've been a family therapist for over 30 years.
I'm David Bulitt. I've been a divorce and family lawyer for more than 35 years.
Together, we have been married for more than 37 years.
In our professional practices, the two of us have been witnesses to individuals and families struggling with life's most difficult challenges. In this podcast, we will talk about the conversations we have had,
The conversations we should have had.
and those that every relationship needs to have in order to find success, happiness, and fulfillment.
This is Conversations for Couples.
The podcast. Welcome back to Conversations for Couples, and we dip our toes.
Podcast.
The podcast. Conversations for Couples.
The podcast.
Yeah, we always screw that up. One of us does. I do. She does. But welcome back, folks. We are here and dipping our toes back in the dating world yet again. A couple that's been married 38 years, Julie and myself. But we are very interested to hear about what's going on these days, the changes that have occurred in terms of meeting and getting to know folks, dating people, and so forth. And we've got today the founder, and I'm sure you've heard of it, of It's Just Lunch. She also is the founder of 33,000 Dates. She's been on the Oprah Winfrey Show, the Today Show, In People Magazine, CBS News, featured in the Wall Street Journal, known as America's premier, and I'll underline that, premier dating expert. Welcome aboard, Andrea McGinty. We're so happy to have you.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here, and congratulations on 38 years. That's amazing.
It is. I hate to do this because I do this joke every time, but I like to say the 17 happiest years of my life, which is not true, but it does get a laugh every so often.
Yeah, and sometimes I get annoyed with him saying that, but here's the reality of the situation. Marriage is hard. So when he says that, maybe it is true. Like
No, it's not. It's more like 35 out of 30.
Okay, yeah. But there's been some hard times. So anyway.
Enough about us. So Andrea, tell us a little bit about how you got started in the dating world with It's Just Lunch.
Totally serendipity. It was totally just an event that happened that changed my life. I was in my 20s living in Chicago, and I was getting married, and 2 days before the wedding, he called it off. And this is 1990. There's no Google. There's no online dating. It's like your friends. I was over the bars, going out and doing that stuff, and friends fix-ups were going so well. And I had this idea. What if there was somebody that was like an executive recruiter, that would call you about, 3 great professional opportunities. Instead, they were calling me about 3 great guys to meet. And that was how It's Just Lunch started. It grew rapidly. 20 years later, we had 110 locations, and I sold it to private equity.
But why lunch? Why not dinner or breakfast or coffee or something else?
Oh, well, first of all, coffee is a total cop out. Coffee is not a date. Sometimes I take my kids are in their 20s, and I'll take one of them, to Starbucks, and we'll be sitting there. And I always know when somebody's on a first date, and, you're all crammed in this place. And there's nothing like romantic about it. You're in your Lululemons. You're on the way to, yoga. You're not date material. And who wants to go out on a breakfast date? I don't. Lunch or like a drink after work is perfect because an hour. You have to eat anyway. And, an hour having a drink with somebody, it's an hour. It's not a 3-hour dinner.
So less pressure in some ways, I guess.
Yeah, so less pressure, easier to get out of if it's not working. And that's how I came up with It's Just Lunch. But the reality was, with It's Just Lunch, more people ended up going out for drinks after work than lunch.
Oh, okay, interesting. Well, the name itself, like when I think of It's Just Lunch, like no big deal, let's have low expectations. Was that sort of part of the name and sort of how that was?
Yep. We could have called it It's Just Drinks. It's it's the low expectation thing, because even now, with how I help people with online dating, I always tell people, go into your dates with 0 expectations. Don't go in with high expectations. don't go in with low expectations, because if you're going in with low, you're kind of negative about the whole thing. If you're going in with high, I've had people who have said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this date. You know, this guy's perfect for me. I already told 3 of my friends about him." I'm like, "Oh no, you haven't even met him yet." You know, and you're telling your friends about him. You know, you're going in with expectations this high, and it's really hard for somebody to meet those sort of expectations.
Yeah.
Sounds almost like a parent whose daughter is going on a date and you're hoping things are going to take, or a son, I guess for that matter. But let's get into what I really want to talk about is what you're doing now.
Yeah.
And online dating. And you now are running a company called 33,000 Dates. So tell us where the 33,000 came from, although I can guess. And let's talk about what you do and how you do it, because I've got some questions when it comes to the online side of things.
Okay, sure. So 33,000 dates. It was the number when I first started of the number of people that I had set up on dates in my life.
Wow.
Wow.
So that's where the number came from. So now I'm at like 36,000 or something, but like I can't like keep changing the name. So that's where 33,000 dates came from. And it came out of when I sold It's Just Lunch. It was kind of funny. It was like 2010. Online dating was kind of getting its act together. And I saw the writing on the wall, you know, that this is, if done right, online dating could be great for people because the pool of people is astronomical compared to what we could do at It's Just Lunch with like a couple hundred members in, you know, each city, you know, that type of thing. So, anyway, it was kind of weird. Like in the same week, I got 2 offers for the company, one from private equity and one from Match.com. And I decided to go for it. And then what ended up happening, I'm just a little bit out of it. And my brother called me. I have 6 younger brothers and sisters. And
Boy.
he had just gotten divorced and he was online and he's like, "Oh man, it's awful. These women
You can
I've been
say
meeting."
sucks on this show. It's fine.
Yeah, you can say so.
Okay, it sucks. That's what my brother said. And you know, he's good looking. He's a CFO, and I'm like, "Jim, what are you doing?" You know. So I got his password from him. Went in, and I'm looking at his photos. This is one of the biggest problems with online dating with men. Those photos, men. Oh, the photos they show. You know, they take selfies in their bathroom mirror. They take pictures of themselves in the car. They take these like really stupid pictures. And so anyway, I fixed his pictures. I fixed his bio. And a couple weeks later, he said, "You know, I'm getting really good dates." So I'm like, "Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome, Jim." And that started this whole thing rolling again. And you know, it was kind of word of mouth. And that's how it's grown. But now I focus on, you know, where It's Just Lunch. I was in my 20s. Now 33,000 dates, you know, I'm in my 50s, right?
Yeah.
So it's, you know, I'm working with an older audience, like mostly like 40 to 65.
Okay.
And they're all, for the most part, they're second acts. You know, they're people who, you know, maybe got married when they're 25 and they wake up one day and they're, you know, 52 and they're like, they're divorced. And like, what do I do? What do I do? You know, I have no idea. My kids grew up with tech. I didn't. So that's
Yeah, I imagine a lot of them don't really have a good handle on how some of the technology works.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. And my latest thing is like, besides teaching them the technology that goes along with online dating, it's all about AI a lot too. Because now, you know, people have discovered AI. Everyone wants to throw everything into AI, and they even throw their photos in there, and then they end up looking like cartoons.
Oh my goodness.
So that's what I'm, you know, I'm really, you know, coaching people from the very beginning. You know, I start with a Zoom call and learn about them. And then from there, I write a profile for them. And I do the research then. There's over 1,400 dating sites and platforms on the market. So this is why people get bummed out about online dating, because they have no idea which one to pick. Because it's hard. And, you know, you guys are in Maryland. I'm in South Florida. What's a great site there won't necessarily be a great site here.
Yeah.
So so when I'm working with clients, I'm thinking about, okay, where do you belong?
Mm-hmm.
Which site? And then I'm very strategic in my approach and business oriented and research driven. So I use like Pew and Statista and a couple of other research companies that I pay for monthly data
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
on dating sites. For example, if you're going to start dating, you wouldn't want to be on Bumble because it's 80% women in the Maryland area.
Okay. Right.
Now
And you need to
you
know
would want
that.
to be on it.
David wants to be on
Yeah.
Bumble.
David would want to be on it.
Yeah.
So, and then from there, I vet their photos, and probably about 50% of them I send to a professional photographer,
Mm-hmm.
and not for like LinkedIn-ish type photos or like, swirly backgrounds behind them, but like stuff they really do, tennis court, golf,
Right. But
just
good quality, good
but
quality.
good quality.
Yeah.
They look really good in the photos. The lighting's good, and get them. Pick the right site. Obviously, put them all on the site, and then this is when the fun begins. So, I'm on the phone with them once a week, coaching,
Okay.
and while let's just pick a site. We'll pick Match.com. Okay, so I'll be on Match.com on my laptop, and they'll be on their laptop on Match.com, and I'm really walking them through the technology, the filters, the algorithms, and how to quickly, because it could turn out when we put, I don't know, David, your criteria in, that there's 700 women that fit it, and
Here's hoping.
not looks wise, but at least maybe criteria wise.
Right.
So, I'll show them how to take it from like a needle in a, I don't know, a haystack to a needle in like a little basket. And
That
so
makes
you can
sense.
go through it quickly. It doesn't feel like a full-time job.
Yes.
They have accountability with me because they know they're getting on the phone with me next week, and we have to talk about, how many dates did you have? How did it go? What happened? And I also help them write messages, because that's where people fall down a lot, is on the initial message.
Yeah, that's interesting as you talk about it. So I'm a therapist, and I work with quite a few folks that are trying to get, one of their goals is to land a date, is to get out there socially. And I often hear that it takes a long time to, like, you have to be on these, sites, and it's a lot of work to sort of be, finessing the algorithm. I've also heard a couple of them say that they're going to go off of it and go back on because of the algorithm. So it almost sounds like a game, and it sounds like you as a professional sort of know how that works, which is helpful.
Right. I know how to play this game. Absolutely. Because if your patients or clients are having that kind of trouble, number one, they're doing something wrong. And number two, if they're frustrated, they're definitely doing something wrong. They're either making this like a full-time job, or it feels like a full-time job, and they're not doing it strategically.
Right.
And if you're doing it strategically, it should take no more than 3 30-minute sessions a week online. That's it. And you have to have patience and perseverance, because generally it takes about 3 months to meet someone.
Oh,
It could be
interesting.
less. It could be way less. Like I met my husband in a month.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's pretty impressive. I met Julie when she was drinking at a fraternity party, but that's a different that's for a different show. But let me ask you a question, and I want to gear this toward folks who have either been married before or their spouse has passed, and they're back in trying to work their way through and figure things out. We have a very good friend of ours, Joan Vassos, who was the Golden Bachelorette, who now is connected with the person that she chose on that show. And we had some interesting conversations with her, and her husband had passed away several years ago. So how do you work with someone? They call you and say, okay, my spouse died 3, 4, 5 years ago. I think I'm finally ready to try to work my way back in and meet people. I don't want to be by myself. How do you sort of, without overwhelming someone, because I can assume it would be overwhelming, particularly someone in their 50s or 60s, whatever it may be.
Yeah, that was married for a while.
Yeah, how do you get them started and comfortable in the process?
Okay. First, it kind of depends where their head's at. And as a therapist, you probably know this. I have a new book that came out in January, and I have 15 worksheets in it, and that's my very first worksheet. Where's your head at? Because there could be somebody who's been widowed, 3 months, but maybe they nursed their partner through, like a 10-year illness or something. And they're absolutely ready to date. On the other hand, they may not, have gone through, the whole cycle, the grief cycle, and they're just not ready. And that's why each person, I talk to them for about 15 minutes on the phone before I even take them as a client, and start the whole process, because I want to make sure that they're ready for this. And really explain, what's going to be required, and what we're going to be doing. And, it's really interesting because sometimes people say, oh, I got your name from my therapist. Other times they'll say, I've been in therapy. I am in therapy. After maybe a really tough divorce, custody battles and, stuff like that. And I'll say, oh, so what does your therapist think about you calling me? And if they say, my therapist thinks it's a great idea, I'm like, done, I'll take them. If they say my therapist thinks I'm jumping the gun, it's too soon. I'll say, hey, look, I've been doing this for over 30 years. I'm going to be here in 6 months. I'm going to be here in a year. Maybe you should take a little bit more time before you get into this. I want to make sure people are ready.
Yeah, yeah. What are the biggest things that people worry about when dating sort of, older, like going back into the, environment of dating? What are people most worried about?
They haven't practiced, and so there's a lack of self-confidence. And it doesn't mean they don't have self-confidence in every other aspect of their life except this, because they haven't done it forever, right? So I always tell people, you know what? Your first 4 dates are practice. That's it, practice. And usually I say 4, but I really know it's going to be about 2. It's usually after about 2 dates, they're like, hey, I'm still interesting. I've still got it, Yeah, it was really entertaining. I made him laugh, or he made me laugh, or, whatever. And okay, so that's one thing. The other thing that they freak out a lot about, where the 20-something crowd doesn't, and even the early 30s doesn't care about it, photos. They're like, oh, my photo's going to be online. What if somebody at work sees it? What if one of my patients sees it? What if one of my neighbors sees it? And I'm like, well, they're on there too. So,
Yeah.
we're going to give up some privacy,
Yeah.
but we could gain a life partner out of this. So you kind of, we're already kind of giving up privacy with, Facebook,
Sure.
so many other things, Instagram. So, I really try to just get them over that hump, and we get good pictures. and then they forget about that pretty fast. They just need somebody to talk them through it.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about the coaching aspect of it.
Okay.
You've got somebody and you're online with them the first time, and they show up, and hair's all over the place. They're wearing a torn t-shirt, from 1977, and just don't look to you like they're ready to have those pictures taken, to put themselves out there, or maybe they do. So I guess what I'm getting at is, do you do any discussing with folks about how they should look early on in the process, how the pictures should look? Maybe you ought to get your hair cut if you're whoever. I mean, is that part of it also? Or do you just sort of take the folks as they come and say, okay, this is who they are, and I'm going to work with this clay, and that's what I'm going to do?
No, I don't work. I don't work with the clay.
Okay.
I'm going to make them the best person they can possibly be.
Okay.
Okay. So, okay, you've been married a long time. Let's say you're a 55-year-old guy. You don't want to go out on your, first couple of dates looking like, your dad. With
hair out of your ears and a bad shirt.
haircut. Yeah.
A hockey jersey. something.
Right. So, I talked to them about that because everything I do is over Zoom because my clients are all over the country. So, what I'll give them, I've got a booklet that goes through tips on, what you should do, what you should look like on these
Like take a
dates.
shower, brush your teeth. I mean,
Oh
No,
yeah,
more than that, I gotta
that
say.
that's basic stuff. No, I go deeper. I'll say go get your teeth whitened
oh,
because you're smiling like this
Yeah.
with your go get your teeth whitened. You're gonna feel so much better. Go and I'll tell a woman, she'll be like, what should I wear on my dates? I'm like, okay, you should go to Nordstrom and use a personal shopper and get a personal shopper who's not 20 and who's not 60, but maybe like around 30, 35, and tell them you're just starting to date again because you don't want somebody like 20 who's going to make you look really young and you don't want a 60-year-old, no offense. But you want somebody who's going to make you look good for your age.
right.
So, some new clothes, hairstyling, a new hairstyle I'll recommend. Oh, I recommend everything I can think of that person needs. And, I'm pretty direct.
That's
And
great.
do people, have you found that people, are, I mean, they're paying you for a service. So it's like me, I give advice, and if somebody doesn't listen to it, there's not much I can do about it. But what have you found to be the reception to those types of things? I imagine sometimes folks can get defensive or upset. This is how I dress. This is how I look, So how do how do you massage that through, especially for someone who's older, who's, sort of set in their ways?
You know what? I rarely come up against that. I mean, when I say I'm direct, I'm graciously direct. I'm not, like ordering them to do something. I'll be like, okay, these are the people that have the most success. 65% of my clients end up in relationships. I want you in that 65% column. So I'm thinking from these pictures, when you're going on your first couple of dates, have you thought about what you're going to wear? Because I'm thinking you probably need to get, let's say I'm talking to you, David, you're a guy. I think you need a couple of new shirts and maybe, a new pair of khakis and a cool pair of shorts and, a cool pair of sneakers or shoes. And, I'm not telling them to break the bank or anything. And they're usually like grateful. They're really happy that I'm telling them this stuff. And sometimes people will say, okay, you know what, Andrea, then I don't want to start my dates for a month because it takes a little while for my hairstylist for an appointment. And I called my dentist and he can't do my teeth for 3 weeks. They're usually super open because, they want to have the best chance. And when you think you're 55, like a 55-year-old, you've got another like good 25, 30, maybe 40 years to live. And, you're not dead.
Right.
It's not like, our grandparents' era where, when you were 60, you were like, there was nobody to date, right? Because there was no way to really, really do it. And you looked like a grandma or you looked like a older mom. So people are very receptive, David.
That's great. So I wanted to ask you about intimacy and, sex. I would imagine that people, especially middle-aged people, getting back out there again can be really, really challenging and anxiety-provoking. How do you coach people? What advice do you give in the sex part of the dating?
She
I
always
have a
focuses
chapter in
on
my
sex,
book
by
about
the way.
sex.
What in
You
your
know,
book?
that's I won't give them any advice until we get to that point where they're on a 4th date or an 8th date and they're starting to ask me those questions. They don't really ask me that at the beginning. All they're worried about is going on the first date at that point and like what they're wearing and what they're going to talk about and stuff.
That's interesting.
But yes, intimacy, absolutely. I talk to them about that. And because people will ask if there's rules about, intimacy. And I'm like, no, there are no rules. I mean, some people, for most women, I would say there's an emotional attachment and they want exclusivity if they're having sex. There's some will just say, it's recreational. I haven't had sex in
Especially
5
if you haven't had
years and I
sex
miss
in a while, right? If you haven't had sex in a while, Yeah, I'd probably, if I was working with you, I'd probably ask you for advice before I even went on the date.
Yeah. Oh, okay. About sex.
Yeah, because I would want to know like what's okay and what's not okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
Okay.
is all
So
good for me to know, by the way.
yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
going I'm not going on any dates, but I would kind of want to know like what would be okay, what wouldn't be okay, and I don't know.
Yeah, I really don't think there's any rules. If it's somebody who just came out of a long, long marriage, and their goal really is they just want to date for a while, they're
Hmm.
not ready to commit to anybody, and my sole goal with them is just getting them out there and
Hmm.
meeting people.
Hmm.
They're going to have sex a lot earlier
Hmm.
and be intimate than somebody who's looking for a long-term relationship. They're
Mhm.
just trying to get back in the swing of things, and
Like
feeling
literally,
them.
like
And then I
literally.
get women, that are like, menopausal and stuff
Hmm.
like that, and
Hmm.
they'll tell me some of those issues.
Hmm.
And I have some recommendations that we're not going to talk
That's
about
fine. We can
that.
save that for another show. Yeah.
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 Well, and
Okay.
also for women and for men, as men age, there's things that don't work quite the same way as it did when they were 16 or 18. So I'm sure you're coaching and talking about that as well.
They bring that up and they say, should I go see my urologist? And I
Yeah.
said, that's a great idea.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's great.
I did a lot. I spent a lot of time reading about the folks that we're going to interview before we interview them, and then I suck it all down to 45 seconds for Julie. But one of the things I noticed about you is now that you work not exclusively but almost primarily with women, and or at least that's what I read. Now I don't know if that's true or not true, or maybe I read an old article. But what I want to ask you is the differences in terms of doing your work with a man or a woman. And again, I don't want to offend anybody out there, but I'm talking about heterosexual folks, at least for the time being.
Okay, so 30% of my clients are male, so
Okay.
70% are female.
Hmm.
Um, and so working with them, the differences.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so in some ways, men are a little bit easier to work with because they're not as emotional, and they, especially when I'm working with somebody who's like a business person or an attorney or a CEO, that they just like direction. Like, tell me what to do and
Hmm.
I will do it, and I'll talk to you next week, Andrea.
Hmm.
And there's no drama. They'll text me a few things that happened. So they go about it in more of a business like way, I would
Hmm.
say.
Hmm.
Women, on the other hand, they there is more. I don't even want to say drama, but there's a lot more hurt feelings, like
Hmm.
if they don't get a response back from somebody.
Hmm.
And I always tell them, hey, this is a game. It's for every 5 messages you send, you're going to get one response.
Hmm.
One response. So that's the average. So the more you do, the more responses you're going
Yeah.
to get. So you have to get over that
Hmm.
feeling of rejection.
Hmm.
So with women, it's some hand holding with patience and perseverance.
Hmm.
And I like working with both.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I would say the men are easier.
Yeah. It's interesting because I work with a lot of clients that are looking for jobs and also dating. And I always tell people dating and job hunting can be the two most soul crushing things you could be doing. There's just rejection built in, and you have to just really get used to it. And it's hard.
Right. I mean, it's like you have to have a thick skin. And if I could sell thick skin, like I'd be, a billionaire.
Yeah.
Because I even know, I was married for 24 years and got divorced. And luckily it was very amicable. And I didn't date for 5 years. And when I started online dating, it was, there were a couple men that I reached out to. Let's talk about that too. That I reached out to that I was like in shock that they didn't respond to me. And I have to say my feelings were a little hurt. And then I was like, wait a minute, you preached the opposite. Get over it.
Right.
Let's move on and do the numbers here. So, like you said, that rejection thing, can be very, can be
Soul
very
crushing.
big.
Soul crushing. Yes,
just,
it can
just
be.
like you said. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we live in a soundbite world. And what I'd like you, if you can, for that person that's out there, and there's going to be a lot of them that are listening into this, what advice do you give those folks who are sort of thinking about, getting started? What do you tell them to think of? What do you tell them in terms of strategy? And of course, how would they get a hold of you if they wanted to sort of start this process?
Okay. So here's what I would say to them. I would say the first thing I would do is, like I said, I want to know your mindset. I would go to my website. It's 33000dates.com, 33000dates.com. And there's a quiz they can take. It's free. And there's 16 questions. And you're going to answer the questions, and then you are going to get a percentage rating based on 100% being an A+. And it's going to make you think about, what you're looking for. But what it's being compared to are my clients that have had success. So they're going to see how they stack up against other people. And, if they're kind of, ready for this whole thing. The second thing I would say is buy my book, Second Acts, Winning Strategies for Dating Over 50. I mean, it's $30 and it's way cheaper than me, right? And it's very, it's written in a fun manner, but it's, like I said, it's strategic. There's 15 worksheets throughout the book. Excuse me. There's also QR codes where I coach you for 5 or 10 minutes through each of the worksheets too.
Oh, neat.
Very cool.
To help you through it. And then if you really want to get a hold of me, there's a button on the website that you can set up a 15-minute call with me,
Nice.
and ask me questions.
Nice. Well, it's great to talk with you. It's great to find out about the dating world that we're presently living in. And I just hope that David and I never need your services.
I hope not.
Well, you two look pretty happy.
We're pretty happy.
We're pretty happy.
We are pretty happy. But
Yeah.
and really thank you for taking the time. I'm quite certain that folks will have gotten great benefit from this. And we're going to put all those links in our show notes. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us, folks out there. We are the Bullitts, TheBullitts. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Pinterest, and all other social media platforms that are annoying and otherwise prevalent in our lives. This is Conversations for Couples.
The podcast.
We'll see you next time. Julie Bulitt is a professionally licensed clinical social worker and family therapist. David Bulitt is a divorce and family lawyer. Julie is not your therapist, and David is not your lawyer. This podcast is meant for educational and entertainment purposes only.